Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you can hear me and see my screen. If you can't, please put a comment into the chat, into the webinar chat, and I'll see that come up and I'll know. So hello again. My name is Amira. I work at Fanshawe College and I'm based in London, Ontario. I work in the International Centre in International Market Development, but I'm also a RISIA, which stands for a Regulated International Student Immigration Advisor. And that is the license and the qualification with which I am presenting today's webinar. And today's webinar is titled Studying at Fanshawe College in Canada, Applying for Your First Study Permit. So we have around 90 minutes today. I have quite a few slides that I want to take you through with some tips and some recommendations that you should be thinking about when preparing your first study permit application to Fanshawe College in Canada. And I hope that we'll have plenty of time for questions. Some of you did send me some questions beforehand, and I've already included answers to those towards the end of my presentation. Okay, all right, so let's get going. If you do have any questions, please put them into the Q&A. That'll be the easiest way for me to end them when we come to the end of the presentation. I'm also going to throw into the webinar chat window a PDF, which I would recommend all of you download. It has some useful links on the IRCC website that you should look at if you're planning to apply for your own study permit. All right, excellent. Good, so let's get going. So these are the highlights of what I'm going to be covering today. We're going to look at where you are in the application process. I know some of you have questions about when is the best time to be applying. I also have a couple slides on preparing your applications and then some recommendations on those tricky supporting documents, which are extremely important to your application portfolio. We have some common questions that I'll share answers to. And then, as I said, we'll have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. So I mentioned that I am a regulated international student immigration advisor. The focus of my certificate, my license, is to support students with immigration questions if they are attending the college that I work for, which is Fanshawe College. I can support you with questions that you have. As an independent student, an individual student, I am not able to assist with any questions you have about documentation for your accompanying family members, such as a spouse or a partner or any children. The way immigration advice is structured at Fanshawe College is that because I work in international recruitment, I can support future students, so students who are not yet enrolled. Once you are an enrolled student at Fanshawe College, we have a team of immigration advisors who will give you that support and that advice, and that is all free of charge. That's part of the services we offer at the International Centre. If you are planning to apply for your own study permit, I very strongly recommend that you work with someone that has been licensed by the College of Immigration Consultants of Canada. And this presentation is a way for you to familiarize yourself with the most important questions. So even if you want to work with somebody else, that's fine. At least you know what kinds of documents and what kind of information you need to prepare and give to them. All right, so this doesn't prevent you from still working with someone. Okay, so let's start off with looking at the student journey. Many of you are probably past this stage. You have probably already applied to Fanshawe College, and you've most likely already received your letter of admission. And I'm hoping that most of you have paid your first semester or your first year of tuition fees. Because after doing that, that is the stage at which you should be applying for your study permit. The recommendation is that you apply for your study permit at least 4 to 5 months before you plan to start studies at Fanshawe College in Canada. And that's just taking into account all of the different steps that need to be completed before you can actually start your classes with us. All right. So this is the stage that you should be at. If you've been invited to this webinar, it means that you're probably joining us in May 2023 or in September 2023. So both groups should have plenty of time. You're actually in very good time to be at this stage and to be planning for the next few steps before you join us. So as I said, the recommendation is very strongly to apply for your study permit after you have received your letter of admission from Fanshawe College and after you have paid a minimum of your first semester of fees. If you are a student who's applying through SDS, you are required to pay the first year of tuition fees before applying for your study permit. Of course, that application for a study permit should be made from outside of Canada. And there is a website where you can check IRCC's current estimated processing times. When I checked yesterday, it was at around 9 weeks. A couple of weeks ago, it was at 12. So the backlog is improving. It is getting faster. However, that 4 to 5 month period is still recommended. All right. So 4 to 5 months before you start in Canada, you should be applying for your study permit. All right. So how do you actually apply? There are two options that you have. The first is the IRCC website, where you need to create a GC key and an IRCC secure account. The second option is something that is still in the pilot stage with IRCC. It's a new portal that they have created. Both of those portals are acceptable. You can choose whichever one. This is the more traditional way, and this is the modern way. There are some glitches still on this portal because it is still in a pilot stage. But really, it is up to you. There is no difference between the two. You can decide which one you prefer. The kinds of documents that you will need in order to submit your study permit application. The first, of course, is the study permit application form, and we'll look at that today in the webinar. These are some of the most important supporting documents. The first is the letter of admission from Fanshawe College. Second is proof of financial support, and I have slides on each of these. I just want to give you a heads up on what we're going to cover. Your passport, of course, a valid passport for your country of citizenship. Passport photos that match the requirements for a Canadian immigration application. There may be additional documents that you need to provide which are specific to your visa office. Your biometrics, which would be your fingerprints and a photograph taken by a designated processing center, and other additional documents that we're going to look at next. So let's start with the letter of admission. It can be either a conditional or an unconditional letter of admission. So with either of those two letters of admission, you can apply for your study permit. Conditional means that there are some academic conditions that have not yet been met. For instance, submission of an English proficiency test, like a Duolingo score or an IELTS test. It could also mean an academic condition in terms of a mathematics grade for grade 12. If you're looking at entering an undergraduate program at Fanshawe that needs a mathematics in your final high school level. Unconditional would be where all conditions have been met and you're good to go. You're good to start the academic program. So even if your letter of admission has conditions, as I mentioned, you can still go ahead and apply for your study permit. Depending on your country of citizenship, to study at Fanshawe, you are required to either pay a 2,300 deposit and then the remainder of the first semester tuition fees, or the first semester tuition fees right at the start, and there isn't a smaller deposit to start, or you need to pay the 2,300 deposit and then the remainder of the first year, which is 2 semesters worth of tuition fees. So each of your letters of admission are what you are going to refer to see exactly what is required for you, because it will be very different based on your country of citizenship. Your letter of admission also has a payment deadline, and that payment deadline is also unique to you. Proof of financial support. This is a really big topic and it's extremely important. The reason it is important is because visa officers, immigration officers are looking to answer key questions when you apply for your study permit for Canada. One of those is, can you support yourself while you are a student in Canada, while you are studying and living in Canada? And for that, you need to provide strong proof of financial support for yourself, for your family members, for your sponsors, whatever the case may be. Most Canadian visa officers interpret strong financial support to mean 4 months of bank statements or savings account passbook or bank drafts, anything to show that you have sufficient funds to cover the cost of 1 year in Canada. So this would be equivalent to your first year of tuition fees, as indicated on your letter of admission from Fanshawe. And it would also include an amount to cover your living expenses in Canada. So the IRCC website gives you an estimate of 10,000 Canadian dollars for your first year of living expenses. If you're planning to travel with other members of your family, you need to show an additional 4,000 per year for an accompanying family member. And for anyone else that is coming with you, it would be an additional 3,000 Canadian dollars per year. However, a note of caution here. IRCC has not updated these living expenses for around the last 8 to 9 years. So these figures are very out of date. Current living estimates that we recommend you plan for, if you're planning to live in London, for the individual, so instead of 10,000, we recommend that you have a minimum of 14,000 Canadian dollars for 1 year of living expenses in London. And if you're planning to attend our Toronto location, the costs in Toronto would be a little higher. And so for that, we are recommending 16,000 for you as the first member of your family. So you as the individual student. What kinds of documents can you support as proof of financial support? So the first is your bank statements from your bank in your home country. If you have a bank account in Canada, that works fine as well. It should be an official bank statement with the bank's letterhead right on top. And if it is a printed paper document, then you can get it stamped in person by your bank. If somebody is supporting you, you need bank statements from them. Parents, sponsor, if it's a scholarship program, if it's a government-funded program, whatever it may be, you need documents, financial documents from those people to show that they have money that they are going to be putting towards your education. Proof of employment is another good one. If you are a more mature student and you're currently working and then you're planning to come to Canada for studies, a proof of employment letter from your employer saying that you're currently employed, what your position is, what your monthly salary is, to show that there is money coming in and that you were accumulating money before coming to Canada. The same applies for if it's your parents or your sponsor. If you own a business, some sort of documents to prove business ownership or income coming in from that business. If it's an education loan that you have taken, if you have property or any assets, any stocks, any other kinds of income generating assets which are going to support your life in Canada. All of these would count as proof of financial support. And for all of them, you should have official documents and, if possible, an official stamp on it to certify it as a document. So it doesn't need to be notarized necessarily. It just needs an official stamp from the company that's issued it. If these documents are in another language, then they do need to be translated into one of Canada's official languages. And in this case, since you're coming to study in Ontario, that language would be English. Many of you will have accounts in your home country and not in Canada, and that's totally fine. However, your currency in your home country may not be easily understood by the visa officer. So the recommendation is that when you prepare a folder with all of your financial document proof, you also include a screenshot which shows the foreign currency conversion between your home currency and the Canadian dollar, so that it is immediately obvious to the visa officer of what your savings, what your proof of financial funds are equivalent to in Canadian dollars. If it is somebody else who is supporting you, then you also need a letter from them explaining where the money is coming from in addition to their bank account details. So for instance, if it is a parent sponsoring you, you would have their bank account details, and then you would have a letter from them saying, I own a business, This is how much revenue my business earns. These are the other partners, the other interested parties in my business, and I commit that I can support this person for their education in Canada. And because the financial document piece is so important, and you may have multiple documents, the final recommendation for that section is that you have a summary or an index right at the start that lists what documents you have included and what proof they provide to the visa officer, so that at a glance, without going through all of the documents, they can see exactly what you have provided to them. Okay. All right, let's move on to the second. Passport. I think this is pretty obvious. You need a valid passport if you're planning to come and study in Canada. You will be asked to provide copies of certain pages in your passport when you're applying for the study permit. The first is the biodata page, which is the page with your photograph, your name, date of birth, etc. You'll also be asked to provide a copy of every page of your passport that has stamps, visas, or markings from any country. And many visa offices ask for your current passport and copies of all expired passports as well. Now, the question that they are trying to answer by looking at all of this is, what is your travel history? And do you have a history of obeying immigration laws for other countries? They want to see that you've traveled to other places, you've left before your status in that country expired, and you returned to your home country, because it creates a good narrative of you being able to respect the immigration laws of Canada as well when you come here. If you do not have a passport, please do apply for it immediately. If your passport is going to expire soon, you should extend it before applying for your study permit. And that is because even if you are applying for a study permit for Canada for a 2-year program, the length of your study permit should match the length of your program in Canada. However, if your passport expires within 6 months, they are only going to give you a study permit and a temporary resident visa for that length of your passport expiry. So it is better to have a longer expiry date on your passport before you submit your study permit application. Passport photo, you would be surprised to hear that this is one of the things that many applicants get wrong. When you go to get your passport photo taken, please take a printout from the IRCC website of the exact photo specifications for Canada. If there are any small changes, it's a very easy reason for the visa officer to delay or to send your application back to you for correction. And that just adds more time to your processing. So check this one very carefully, please. It will be a digital photo that you will be uploading to your study permit application, because that document submission has to be online. And then documents specific to your visa office. There are certain countries that require additional documentation. And this link here, and it is also in the useful links document, I'm going to throw it into the chat again for those who joined us a little late. Please click on this link. From the drop-down, choose your country of citizenship, and it will generate a list for you of what documents you need based on your country of citizenship. If there are any additional documents required, you should be putting them all together into a single PDF and uploading them under the optional document section of your study permit application. Biometrics. So this is the collection of your fingerprints and a photograph that is taken at a visa processing office or a visa processing center. If you have not provided biometrics within the last 10 years to Canada, then you will be required to provide these. The time to collect biometrics is not included in the processing time indicated on the IRCC websites. So that would be an additional between 2 to 4 weeks. You are given 30 days to complete that after receiving the biometrics request letter from IRCC. For some of you, and there was a student who sent in a question, a student who lives in Syria, and there are no biometric collection points in his country of residence. And that is very possible. In that case, this student would need to travel to one of their neighboring countries to provide biometrics there. It's a similar case for students from a country like Iran, where they would need to travel to Turkey or to Malaysia in order to provide biometrics. So please go onto this link right here. It is in the PDF that I have shared, and it allows you to search for biometric collection points based on country. There is an additional fee for the biometrics collection. I have that on the next slide. And you need to pay that at the time of your study permit application and pay that by credit card, ideally. So the additional cost for biometrics is 85 Canadian dollars. So that is in addition to the study permit cost. And as I said, you need to submit them within 30 days of receiving the biometrics instruction letter from IRCC. Okay, so any other additional documents that you might need? So depending on your specific circumstances, which would include country residence program that you're applying to at Fanshawe College, there might be additional documents that you need to provide, such as a letter of explanation, a study plan, a medical exam, family information form, or Schedule 1, which is an application for temporary residence. So let's go through these step by step. So the letter of explanation is a way to describe any additional information that you have not been able to include on the study permit application form. As many of you must have seen, the study permit application form is a structured PDF. It has a set question and a small space for you to give a very short, direct answer. There may be things that you want to include in your application that have not been asked in there, or maybe there is not enough space to capture it on that PDF. So this is where the letter of explanation comes in. And this is where you address any issues that you would like to clarify or that you feel the visa officer might find useful when they are looking at your application. Any supporting documents or any screenshots or any other additional proof, and any additional employment history. So if you're familiar with the study permit application form, I believe there are only 3 sections where you can put in previous employment history. If you have more employment history, you do need to share that, because you need to tell us what you have been doing for the last 10 years. And if you've been doing more than 3 jobs, then all of that additional information is not going to fit on that PDF. And that's why you need to put it into your letter of explanation. This is an additional document, and so it should be combined into a single PDF with other additional documents and uploaded under client information in the optional document section. All right, so there will not be a section that says letter of explanation, click here to upload. That would be in the lower section with optional documents. How do you write this letter of explanation? So the first key thing to address is ties to your home country. You need to explain and provide supporting documents of any family ties that you have to your home country, your country of citizenship. And the question that you are answering for the visa officer is, why would I return to my home country when I have finished my studies in Canada, or when my immigration status in Canada has ended? And this has to be a very important, convincing argument, because this is one of the key reasons for study permits being denied, where visa officers are not convinced that you will return home if you cannot continue to stay longer in Canada. So what kind of proof and what would you speak about in this paragraph where you're talking about ties to your home country? You're going to talk about family members who live in your home country that may be dependent on you. Perhaps you have economic or financial ties, proof of property ownership, any assets, anything that links you to returning home. Perhaps it's a connection with your present or your future employer. Perhaps they've said that after studying in Canada, they want you to return to them and they want you to continue working for them. So those are the documents and the narrative that you would provide for ties to your home country. I mentioned earlier that additional employment history is another key piece. So you need to provide employment history for the past 10 years. If you cannot capture that in the PDF for your study permit application form, all of that additional employment history needs to be included in your letter of explanation. A second very important document is the study plan. The first and most important thing that you need to know is that your primary reason for coming to Canada right now is to study. You may have future long-term plans. You may be thinking of applying for a postgraduate work permit. You may be thinking of taking advantage of the federal programs towards permanent residency. But all of that is a secondary intention. It is not your primary intention. When you're applying for a study permit, you are going to be addressing your primary intention, which is why you want to study in Canada. And so for this, you should submit a very well-written one-page study plan, which answers the following 3 questions and provides any information that would support this narrative. So your first question that you should be answering in your study plan: why do you wish to study in Canada? And why in the program to which you have been accepted? And why at Fanshawe College? So why Canada? Why the program? And why Fanshawe College? The visa officer wants to see that you've done some research about where you are coming, the country you're coming to, the city, the institution. Do you know enough about it? Was it a deliberate choice? Are you well informed? Are you prepared for what's going to be your experience in Canada? All of this needs to be very personal. It needs to be genuine for you. You need to be honest and convincing because you are making a case for them for why you should be chosen for a study permit. The second key question is, what is your overall educational goal? And how does the program that you have applied to at Fanshawe College show a progression in terms of your work or your study history? So for instance, you need to explain if you have taken, say, a business undergraduate program in your home country, and now you are applying for a project management graduate certificate at Fanshawe College. You need to explain how your undergraduate program in your home country, any work experience that you had in your home country, how that is the start of a journey towards taking a project management graduate certificate at Fanshawe. So there has to be a story there. Why are you now interested in project management? How will it support your career progression in the future? Okay. And then the third and equally as important question, why are you choosing not to do this program in your home country? Why are you choosing to leave and come to Canada, far away, invest all of this money? Why is that a choice that you are prepared to make? Is it that the program is not offered? Is it that the courses within the program do not cover what you need? There could be many reasons. And the reasons you provide have to be very specific to your circumstances. All right? In many cases, the study plan is a given category within the mandatory documents that you need to upload. If it is not listed there, we still recommend that you prepare a study plan and that you combine it with all of the other PDFs, which are additional documents, and upload that under the optional documents section. Medical exam. So you are required to take a medical exam if you've lived in a certain country, a designated country, which is what IRCC calls it, for more than 6 months in the last 12 months. The list of designated countries is available on the IRCC website, and the link is in the PDF that I have shared. You're also required to take a medical exam if you're planning to work within a certain field or a certain industry in Canada. So for instance, if you're planning to work with a vulnerable population, such as children or seniors, so perhaps working in the hospital industry, in healthcare, in schools, in the education sector, and so forth. For the medical exam, you cannot go to your own doctor. You need to go to an IRCC-approved panel physician. There is a list of IRCC-approved panel physicians on the IRCC website. You have 2 options. You can take an upfront medical exam with one of these panel physicians before submitting your study permit application and include it in the documents that you submit to them. Or you can wait for IRCC to send you a letter requesting that medical exam and then book the medical exam and go ahead and do that. But a word of caution here, the processing time for the medical exam, for getting an appointment, that is not included, again, in the estimated study permit processing time indications on the website. So if it says it takes 9 weeks to process a study permit, getting the medical might take an additional 3 to 4 weeks. So you need to factor that amount of time in when you're looking at your overall timelines. Family information form. This form is compulsory for you to fill, regardless of whether you are traveling to Canada with family or not. So even if you are coming as an individual student, a single student, whatever the case may be, you still need to fill this family information form. An important piece to note about this document is that it needs to be filled on your computer, printed. You need to sign it by hand, scan it, and then upload it. It is not a digital PDF that you can fill and sign and add a digital signature to online. Okay, so this one has to be printed, signed manually, and then uploaded. If you've indicated that you don't have a spouse or a common law partner, you need to sign and date section A. If you've indicated that you don't have children, sign and date section B, and then right at the bottom, you have to sign and date section D as well. When you go through it, it's very straightforward. It'll make sense. I'm pretty sure you won't have any questions around that. And then a final document, the application for temporary residence. This document is only required if in your main study permit application PDF, you answered yes to specific questions in the background information section of the form. So question 3, 4, 5, or 6 in that study permit application form, if you answered yes to any of those questions, then you need to submit this form. Most of you will not need to fill the Schedule 1 or submit it. And that is why this document is listed under the optional document section of the IRCC account. Okay. All right. SDS. SDS stands for the Student Direct Stream. It is a fast track and expedited pathway that the Canadian government has created for specific countries. The countries are listed here. However, there are additional documents that are required if you're planning to apply through SDS. Okay, I have them listed on the next page. If you are a student from any of these countries, you have the option of applying through SDS or not applying through SDS. You can continue through the regular stream of a study permit application as well. That choice is completely yours. If you want to apply through SDS, there are certain documents that you need to provide, which may be in addition to what you need for a regular stream applicant. The admission letter, of course, that is standard for both. Of course, you need to be living outside of Canada when you apply. For SDS specifically, you need to have paid tuition for your first year of studies to Fanshawe. You also need a guaranteed investment certificate of 10,000 Canadian dollars, which is an upfront proof of payment for your first year of living expenses in Canada. You may need a medical exam. This will depend on country of residence. You may need police certificates. You will most definitely need your most recent secondary or post-secondary school transcripts. And you will need a language test result for IELTS, showing a general training score of 6.0 or higher. So these are all eligibility requirements that you need to meet if you want to apply through SDS, if that is a program that is available to you for your country of citizenship. Okay, so we've gone through the supporting documents. I now want to look at completing the actual study permit application form. And we're doing well on time. So I think we should be good for questions. So the first question is right at the top of the study permit application form, there is a section called UCI, and that stands for Unique Client Identifier. It is an 8 or a 10-digit number. You would only have it if you have previously applied to Canadian immigration, either for a visitor visa or for any other immigration documents. If you do not have a UCI, you can leave that section blank It is not going to reject it if that is blank. Designated Learning Institute number. Fanshawe has two different ones, one for students who are studying at the London or the regional campuses of Woodstock, St. Thomas, and Simcoe, and a second different DLI number for those who are studying at the Fanshawe Toronto location. Note that these numbers start with the letter O and not the number 0. And that number would be slotted right into this section here under details of intended study in Canada. Duration of expected study. This is where it asks you for your from date and your to date. The from date should be the program start date, which is shown on your letter of admission from Fanshawe College. The to date should be the date for the end of your studies plus 90 days. This is a recommended rule of thumb by most immigration consultants and advisors because it gives you enough time to satisfy any other academic requirements for your program. So your end of your program date plus 90 days. The cost of studies. This is where you need to provide information on your expenses, including your first year tuition fees, rent, food, and any other estimated costs for the first year. So there is a box for your specific tuition fees for a 1 year at Fanshawe. So if you're enrolled in a 2-year or a 4-year program, you would still be providing cost of tuition for the first year. And then room and board for the first year and other for the first year. I've put the 10,000 in here, but if you remember, I mentioned earlier that Fanshawe recommends, based on the current cost of living, that you should be looking at 14,000 Canadian dollars if you're planning to study in London or any of the regional campuses, and 16,000 if you're planning to study at the Toronto location. The amounts that you fill here are really important because they need to match the amounts that you show in this section, which is funds available for your stay. So for example, if you had a combination of 21,000 in your bank account, 10,000 from your parents, you would indicate that you have 31,000 available for funds for your stay in Canada. This 31,000, and I'm going to switch back to the previous slide, should match this total because this is the cost that you're going to incur when you come to Canada as a student. So it should match or exceed, right? That's just logical sense. It should not be lower. Employment section. We talked about this a little bit. There are a couple things that I want to emphasize. So in the employment section, you should be including all part-time and full-time jobs over the last 10 years. And this includes any internships or any practicums that you have done. Under current activity, if you are working, it should be your employer. If you are studying, it should be the name of your school. And under title, you should write student as activity. The to date should be the month and year of your study permit application. So for example, if you're applying in December 2020, this should be your to field. Okay. The form should be filled in chronological order. And as I said, if you need more space to include items that you have not been able to capture, they should be put into the letter of explanation so that you have a full picture for the last 10 years. Background questions. Do you remember I mentioned that there is a form that you only need to fill if you have said yes to any of the questions in the background information section? Here are the questions that we're talking about. The questions are, have you ever remained beyond validity of your status, attended school without authorization or worked without authorization in Canada? Have you ever been refused a visa or study permit, denied entry or ordered to leave Canada or any other country? Have you previously applied to enter or remain in Canada? If you answered yes, there is a box where you can provide additional details. And in that case, you would need to fill the additional form that we looked at, which was the optional document. It is very important to fill all of this very honestly, because they will have records. They will be able to track whether you are giving an honest reply. It is quite likely that many of you would say yes to this question. Have you previously applied to enter or remain in Canada? Perhaps you've applied to visit Canada before, in which case you would provide details of the visitor visa permit that you had. The study permit application form is one that you need to fill and sign digitally. All right, so you will fill off all of the answers. You will click validate. It will generate some barcodes, and I'll show you what that looks like. This document you do not need to print and sign. You just need to write your name at the bottom, and that counts as a digital signature. When you validate the form, it will tell you if there are any errors in the form that you need to go back and correct. If everything looks good, it will generate a series of barcodes which look like this. You save the version with the barcodes on your computer. It may be possible that you do that today, and then tomorrow you realize that there was something you forgot to put onto the form. Open up the same form, make the change, and then click validate again to refresh the barcodes and update the form. And that is perfectly fine. You do not need to start the form all over again. Study permit processing times, I've mentioned these. I'm sure many of you already looked at the site. As I said, when I checked yesterday, it was at 9 weeks, I believe. It was a couple of weeks ago at 12 weeks. However, a good rule of thumb, you should be applying for your study permit at least 5 months before your start date of your program. And this does depend on your country of citizenship, but 5 months allows you to complete all of those different pieces that we talked about today. So your study permits application's been submitted. It's been approved. Everything is looking good. And what would happen next is that you would get a letter of introduction on the online portal. Okay, so you would get a message saying that you have a document that is waiting to be read. That is called a letter of introduction. It is also called an approval in principle or a PPR. This document basically tells you that 95% you're good to go. The only additional step that needs to be taken is that you need to submit your passport to your visa office for the addition of a sticker, and that is for certain countries. Other countries, you would only need an electronic travel authorization. Once you have this letter, the PPR, you need to let Fanshawe College know, because it means that you're pretty much confirmed to come and join us. You also need to print a copy of this letter and carry it when you are traveling to Canada, because this is the letter that you're going to provide at customs, at immigration. And based on this letter, they are going to print out for you your study permit document. Okay, so this is not your study permit document that you will only get when you arrive in Canada at the border. You should not be booking your travel until you have received a letter that looks like this, which approves you, because it is more risky. Until you have this, you are not confirmed to get a study permit approval. So I mentioned that some countries would need a sticker in their passport, and some countries would need an electronic travel authorization, an ETA. This is the visa that you need to travel to Canada. So the study permit is your status while you're in Canada. And one of these two documents is allows you to enter Canada when you're coming out and when you're returning. Certain countries need a temporary resident visa, which would be a sticker that is affixed into your passport. And that is why you need to submit your passport to the visa office for them to put the sticker in. Other countries only require an ETA. Both of these documents do not require a separate application. When you apply for your initial study permit to Canada, the visa office will automatically process one of or the other of these based on your country of citizenship. There is also no additional cost for these two, okay? If you're from a TRV required country, once your study permit is approved, as I said, IRCC will contact you and ask for your passport. You send that in, and then they will put a sticker that looks like this into your passport. It's also known as a visa. It's called multiple things, but at least you know that this is what allows you to enter the country. If it is a country that requires only an ETA, when you get that letter of approval, the PPR letter, whatever you want to call it, there will be a paragraph there that tells you what your ETA number is. There is no action required from you. That ETA is digitally linked to your passport number, and you can go onto a website and you can check your ETA status online once you've received that number. In the unfortunate instance where your study permit application is refused, IRCC will send you a letter explaining why. It may be because you didn't meet certain criteria. One of those, as I said, is showing proof that you have enough money to support yourself while you're in Canada. Another may be that you did not pass your medical exam. Another, that you did not convince the visa officer that your main purpose, your primary intention for coming to Canada was to study. And another may be that you did not convince them that you will leave Canada at the end of your study period. If you have questions about why you were refused, you can contact the visa office and ask for clarification. You can also apply again, unless the letter you get from them says that you cannot. However, if you choose to apply again, you should be including information that you did not include the first time, and that answers some of the concerns that they had. So that directly addresses some of their concerns. If you decide to reapply for your study permit, as far as Fanshawe College is concerned, you can defer your start date. You need to do that within a certain time period, and that has to be within 10 days of the start of classes. So between the first day and the 9th day of class, if you want to defer, we need to know. Because based on that, you need to fill the withdrawal or the refund form. And you would need to apply for a refund or a withdrawal from the program and be eligible for a refund. Okay. So if you were denied a visa, just to reiterate, because this is important, within 10 business days of the start of semester, you need to fill the withdrawal or the refund form. You need to upload a copy of the IRCC letter that is denying you a study permit. And based on that, Fanshawe can give you a full refund of the fees minus an administrative fee of $250. I have 2 slides here on working on and off campus, but I think I'm going to skip through those. I want us to get to the questions and talk about those in a bit more detail. So I'm just going to go down to the first few questions that were submitted to me that I want to cover. And I'm just going to throw the link, the PDF, into the chat again once more for those who joined us a little late. So a couple of you had questions about extending your study permit. If you are a new Fanshawe student, yes, you can apply for your study permit extension within Canada. And it would be obviously at a different DLI from where you previously completed your studies. You can do that online. You can go onto the IRCC website, create a GC key, and go ahead and do that. Please check the current expiry date on your study permit and also on your TRV. Remember, the TRV is the sticker in your passport or your ETA. If you are a continuing Fanshawe student, you have the option of applying for the extension yourself. And we do have documents in the International Center that we can send to you. Or you can book an appointment with one of our immigration advisors and they can talk you through the process. All right, so come to the International Center, get in touch with one of our colleagues. This link for booking an appointment is in the PDF that I have shared. One of you asked if you can travel outside of Canada when your study permit extension is being processed. And the answer is no, you probably should not. Because if your study permit has expired, it is your primary immigration document. And if you're returning to Canada from outside Canada and you do not have a valid status in Canada, you're going to be stopped by the border officials. So that would be an unnecessary risk for you to take. There was a question submitted about the length of the study permit and the length of the co-op work permit. So when you're applying to Fanshawe College and say your program has a co-op component or a work experience component like an internship, right at the start, you are asked to fill answers to an automated questionnaire. One of those questions asks if there is a work component to your studies in Canada. If you say yes, an additional form that you're required to submit is a letter confirming that there is a co-op or a work experience component within your academic program at Fanshawe. And Fanshawe does give you a letter very clearly stating this. Your study permit and your co-op work permit will be processed together. So you should get both of them together when you arrive in Canada at the border. They should be printing out 2 documents for you, your study permit and your co-op work permit. Ideally, both of them should have the same start and the end date, even if your co-op permit is only happening in the final semester of your academic program. However, your co-op work permit is only valid for when you are doing the co-op. So even if the start period is the start of your studies at Fanshawe, it doesn't mean you can take a co-op during that time. The document is only valid when you're actually doing your co-op. All right. One of you was having some concerns with the IRCC study permit portal, and you said it was not working. This happens quite often. 2 recommendations for you. You should clear the cookie cache on your computer. Often those cookies interfere when you're trying to log into the IRCC account again, or you should use a different browser. Google Chrome is the recommended browser. It is always the one that is that works most often. So that is a possible IT solution for you. There was a student who mentioned that they have applied for 2 programs at Fanshawe, and they were asking whether they need to pay the tuition fee for their second program right now when they're planning to attend the first program. And the answer is no. You will only pay the tuition for your second program before the start of your second program. So that is going to be sometime around 3 to 4 months before the start of that second program. You do not need to pay that right now before you have even started your first program. All right. And then the question from the student in Syria, I did answer that earlier, that you do need to travel to a neighboring country to give those biometrics. And so you should search for a suitable country in the list and see where is easiest and most affordable for you to travel to easily. All right. I'm going to go back to this page, and now I'm going to pull up the Q&A. So thank you for those who've thrown some questions into there. So Amro, you're asking about the study permit, whether you need to apply for a visa. I think I've already answered that the TRV is automatically processed, or the ETA is automatically processed at the same time by the visa office when you apply for a study permit. There is no separate application, and there is no separate cost attached to that. Shane has a question about waiving the application fee for the letter of admission and how long the process before issuance. Shane, that depends very much on your country of citizenship. It is right now, it's a processing time of 6 working days for all countries except for India. India is a little bit longer. So I would suggest that you get in touch with your agent, or if you're working with an agent, or with the Fanshawe Education Advisor, which is one of our team members, and they can talk you through that. There are certain instances where we can waive an application fee, and you need to talk to them about that directly. All right, so I hope I've answered that. Question from Arturo. What happens if you get a study permit, but before moving to Canada, you get a job offer to move to Canada? Arturo, I cannot answer that question. Unfortunately, it is beyond the scope of my license as a RISIA. You would need to speak to an immigration advisor or send a question into the IRCC, and they can respond to that for you. It's beyond the scope of my license. All right, thank you. Question from Naib. Do you need a UCI? All right, I've addressed that. We've looked at that in detail. Page 1, section 10B under personal details. Okay, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to pull up the study permit document. Give me 1 second so that I can see exactly what document what section you are referring to there. And I assume this is the main study permit application form. Yes, there we are. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now so that you can see what I'm looking at as well. All right, so this is the main study permit application form. So Naib, you are asking page 1, section 10B under Here we go. Under personal details, if you are in a common law relationship, do you enter the date that you got together or the date in which you met the requirements of a common law relationship under IRCC? So the date you entered into the common law relationship, it's very clear right here. Provide the date, I'm going to make that a little bit larger. Provide the date on which you were married or the date on which you entered into the common law relationship. Page 3, section 1B. Under details of intended study in Canada. All right, there isn't a category of postgraduate certificate. Do I simply select other if my field of study is not listed? My level of study will be so you're attending a college, you're attending a postgraduate certificate, so yours would be a college certificate. All right, that's very clear. Page 3, section 5, under details of intended study. Oh, is this your GIC or bank draft? Funds available for my stay. So I've gone through the finance piece in a lot of detail. So I think this answers, it should be any funds available for your stay. So your GIC, your bank draft, your bank statements, if your parents are sponsoring, if you have any savings, any other assets, all of those should be included in funds available for your stay. And this amount should match the supporting documents that you provide. So if you are saying 31,000, I think was my example, then you should be showing in your supporting documents that you have 31,000 Canadian dollars available to support you. Andrea, I have reshared the PDF and I think, I hope that you've seen it, but I will throw it in again towards the end of the session. So I hope you've been able to download that. Okay, there's an attendee who was not able to download because they're on their phone. Not to worry, we will be sending a follow-up email to today's webinar and I will include a link to the most recent PDF. So you will have a copy to refer to that, not to worry. Question from an anonymous attendee. When writing your SOP, which I assume is your study plan, what embassy address should I choose if you don't have a Canadian embassy in my country? And can I choose which country of biometrics? Okay, so the first piece of that question, what embassy address? I would just address it to IRCC office. You don't need to put a specific country right at the top. You can say to visa processing officer, to the immigration officer at IRCC, all right? And can you choose which country of biometrics? Yes, if there is not anywhere in your country, which would be the obvious choice, then you can choose a neighboring country. I shared a link. You can put Lebanon into the search term, see what is available in Lebanon. You can do the same for Jordan, and then you can choose whichever works best for you. Okay. Another question from Amro. You said the money should match. What if I've already paid the first semester fees? In this case, the number will be less. Absolutely. And then in that case, you are obviously going to include a printout of the receipt to Fanshawe showing the amount of fees that you have paid to Fanshawe. Okay, so that obviously shows the immigration officer that you already prepaid an amount. So you would need to show less money within your bank accounts. Arturo, just give me a second, please. Okay, if you get a study permit, what happens if before your arrival date, you get a job offer? Okay, Arturo, this is again the same question which touches on an area that unfortunately I cannot advise on. So please do check with an immigration consultant on this or with IRCC. Question, can I apply with a passport that won't expire until a year, but after applying, go to Canada with a renewed passport because the renewed passport takes time? Can you apply with a passport that does not expire? So you want to apply for your study permit on a passport that is valid until, say, March, and then in May, you want to travel with a new passport. I am not 100% sure. So what I'm going to ask, anonymous attendee, if you can see my email address up here, if you could send me an email, and I can check that for you with IRCC, and I can get back to you with an answer. Okay. I want to be 100% sure before I give you an answer to this. So please send me an email. My email address is right up there in that corner. And I can get back to you today on that. Okay, I have acceptance for 2 programs, construction, project management, and BIM. Should I put only tuition fee for the first program in the application form or the total? My BIM acceptance is unconditional, requiring certification. Should I submit certification and get another acceptance letter prior to apply for study? Okay, so you are applying right now. You are applying for your, sorry, I need to reread that. That was a bit of a longer question. It's unconditional. Should you submit certificate and get another acceptance letter? Okay, I don't understand the last piece of that question. Let me answer the first piece. For tuition, you need to include the tuition for the first year of your studies in Canada, right? I did mention that earlier. Your initial study permit application is for your first program. Should you submit your certificate? Okay, this student as well, I think I need more details. So if I could ask you to email me again, you have my email address up there. I need to look at your application. And I need answers to a couple more questions, and it's best not to do those, share those private details in this forum. So please do send me an email and I can talk you through some of that. Okay. Naib, you have a previous Canadian visitor visa. You don't know your UCI number. You can't find it with the VAC you dealt with. That's okay. If you can't find it, not to worry. You don't have to put it in the UCI. If you have it, of course you can. I would suggest going through, if you can't see it in your email correspondence. And if you dealt with a VAC, obviously you did it with them in person and not online. So you don't have a online record as well. So Naib, I wouldn't worry about that. If you need to leave the UCI blank, then that's okay. All right. Adam, your LOA says to provide IELTS score and 2300. Is Fanshawe going to send you another document to pay your first semester tuition? Yes, Adam, Fanshawe is. Typically, we send that document around 10 weeks before your the start of your program. However, on your letter of admission, it should indicate that aside from the deposit, what amount is due for your full semester. So since we are encouraging that you pay for the full semester before applying for your study permit, you can see the amount in there. You can make the payment on Flywire. If you have questions, contact, let me stop sharing the screen and share my previous presentation again with the original contacts. Contact your your education advisor. So one of our Fanshawe team members, and they can help you out with that. So that's the link right here. How many days does it take for Fanshawe to receive tuition? It depends on the country. Typically, we're seeing between 5 to 7 days for the money to be processed through the international banks. Can you apply directly to the college or should you use the IRCC website? Cleopatra, there's some confusion here. You apply to the college for your acceptance to an academic program, and you apply to IRCC for your study permit. So those are 2 completely different processes and 2 different documents that you would need. Ishara, receiving an LOA, the processing time I mentioned earlier, if you are from a country that is not India, it is typically around 6 working days. If you are a citizen of India, it takes closer to 2 weeks for that processing. Sure, I will put the PDF into the chat once more. I hope everyone who needed it has seen it. Okay, for the colleague who cannot download or view, as I said, I'm going to send it around on email as a follow-up. so you can download it from my email later today. I've answered this question about Flywire. Jenny, if you're a Filipino citizen, but you're in the US, what will you put when applying for your visa? So does it ask you, so I'm assuming that's on the visa, that's the section on the study permit application form. It will ask you citizenship when you are doing the interview, the pre-assessment questions on the IRCC website. And it's going to ask you your address details here, current country or territory of residence. So this is where you're going to be saying the US and what your status is in the US. Where does it ask you for your address? Just done a quick search for that. Yeah, current mailing address. This should be your US address. If you are there as a longer term resident and you are going to continue being there for the length of the study permit processing. But if you are just in the US for a couple of weeks on holiday, you're planning to go back to the Philippines, then you should be using your home address. If your visa was approved for a 2-year, but you want to switch to a 1.1, a 1+1, do you need to reapply for your visa? Jillian, your visa was approved for a 2-year program and you wanted to switch to a 1+1. Yes, you need to reapply. Your study permit is tied to the program that you have applied to. So yes, you need to submit a brand new study permit application if you want to change programs before entering Canada. Question from Louise, where can you find a link to search for IRCC panel physicians? Louise, that link is in the PDF, so please do take a look in there. Program includes placement for 21 weeks. I need to apply for a work permit. No, you need to apply for a co-op permit. And that is one of the screening questions. As I mentioned, when you first create your IRCC account, there are certain screening questions that you're asked. And I have taken a screenshot of that to show you because it is a common question that is asked. So let me show you what that screening section looks like. Right here. Okay. So when you're doing the screening questions, one of the questions they ask you is work an essential component of your studies. In this section, you should be saying yes, in order for them to generate a document that you need to fill to receive your co-op permit. Okay. Do you combine requirement files into one PDF? Let me stop sharing this. Or are there different types of documents separate as one PDF? So each, I had taken a screenshot of some documents here. Okay, excellent. Good, I can share this. All right, so I took a screenshot approaching it from a specific profile. So this might not be exactly what it looks like for you. If there is a special section here that you need to fill, this would be a separate document that you would upload as an individual document. For instance, if we look at proof of means of financial support, under this section, you would be uploading multiple pages of a PDF, which have multiple bank statements, letters, the foreign currency exchange, all of those together. If there is a document that is not listed here under supporting documents, but it is an optional document, for instance, the study plan that we looked at earlier. That study plan, the letter of explanation, those would be combined into a single PDF and uploaded under optional documents because they don't fall under the main category of supporting documents that you need. They are an optional document that you are submitting to IRCC. Randy, how do you determine if your form is SDS or regular stream? So Randy, if you've already prepared your, if you've gone through your screening questions, you will get to this stage. Based on the supporting documents list that you see, you will be able to see whether it's asking you for the SDS documents, such as a GIC, such as an IELTS score. So it will be immediately evident to you whether you're applying for SDS or regular stream. Yin, you've received an offer from Fanshawe this month for September 23. When can you submit? So the recommendation here is that you submit after receiving your admission and after paying a minimum of first semester tuition fees. So that would be the time at which you apply. If it's September 2023, you have some time. It's a good thing that you did start early. Make sure that you pay your 2,300 deposit to Fanshawe right off the bat so that you secure your seat. And then I would suggest, I'm assuming, Yin, that you are a Chinese citizen or perhaps from Hong Kong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But processing time, I would suggest that by the end of January, all of your documents should be ready for you to submit your study permit application. Jose, if you are currently working in your home country, are you required to present a letter to IRCC from your employer? It's not necessary, but Jose, a letter from your employer which says what your position is and how much you are earning, that would be a good document to include in your proof of financial support, because it would show that there is money coming into your account, that you are accumulating financial funds which will be able to support you when you come to Canada. Amir Hussein, a conditional offer that you need to provide English proficiency. After you submit your IELTS score, do you get another offer letter from Fanshawe? Sorry, I need to read that once more. You have a conditional from Fanshawe, which states that you need to provide your IELTS. After you provide IELTS, do you get another offer letter? No, you do not. You would use that same document. And therefore, your second question is not relevant because a new offer letter would not be issued. The letter of admission that you have right now, the conditional one, is the same one that you would use to apply for your study permit. Okay. Is it possible to show your Singapore fund? Absolutely. Yes, for sure. Any assets, any funds that you have, a statement, any proof of that, a copy of that is good to include. You have to provide biometrics of all members of your family, even if you have children of 5 and 1 year old. So Luis, I can only advise you on your application. If you have other family members that are coming with you, please check the link on the IRCC website. I believe other family members do need to, but I do not know what the age restriction is. So you need to check into that yourself, please. Very good question. SDS or normal application, which is faster? Every day I hear different responses. Typically SDS was promoted by the Canadian government as a faster way. I hear from some countries. Last year I heard from Vietnam that the normal application was actually faster. So I have no idea. It would be your own decision. Sorry. Are you able to apply for a study permit if you've just paid the 2,300 deposit? This depends on your country of citizenship. Many countries of citizenship require that you've paid a first semester. Some, as I said, require first year. What I would suggest is if you could get in touch with your Fanshawe education advisor and ask them if it's possible to apply after paying just 2,300. I know that for some countries in the Caribbean, it is possible, but I'm not sure what it would be for your specific country of citizenship. Do you have to pay a deposit fee before the deadline given? Yes, absolutely. Because if you do not, the seat is withdrawn and another student is given that seat at Fanshawe. So you need to keep an eye on all of our deadlines, please, and do meet them. Will funds prove financial availability if they are placed in a sanctioned bank? If so, should I explain to the visa officer how you're going to transfer funds to Canada from a sanctioned bank? That's a very good question. If it's a sanctioned bank, my assumption would be that those funds are locked and not available to you. If that is your main source of funds, then yes, you should be explaining how you're going to get access to those funds for your stay in Canada. Absolutely. And your letter of explanation will play a very key role in that, because that's where you can explain that. All right, we've already answered that question. Can go to the next one. You've already got an undergrad degree. Will IRCC consider your motivation unreasonable if you're offered a diploma from Fanshawe College? This is a very case-specific question. And to be honest, one-on-one counseling is needed for that. If you, I need to know the specifics of your application, what undergrad degree you did, what diploma you're planning to do at Fanshawe, what some of your reasoning around that is. If you want to send me an email, again, I am happy to give you a couple of pointers on email, okay? Can you get a 3-year work permit after 3 semesters, 1.5 years of study? Right, so this is one of the slides that I skipped through because I wanted us to focus on study permits today. There are certain lengths. If you take an 8-month program, you get an 8-month work permit. If you take 1 year, it's a 1 year. If you take a 2-year program, you're eligible for a 3-year. And you're asking about, can you get a 3-year work permit after 3 semesters, which are equivalent to 1.5 years of study? That is, that question depends. Are your semesters back to back? So for instance, is one of the semesters during the summer, in which case it would count as a 1-year program and not as a 1.5. So I would need to know more details on that for me to answer that more accurately. There is a link in the PDF that I'd shared, which gives you a link to the IRCC website, and that breaks down very clearly. And I think it has an answer to this question. Okay, I'm applying for a 1-year course. Can I pay tuition for the first semester and still apply? This question depends on your country of citizenship. So for some countries, yes, you can pay for the 1 semester and then apply for the study permit. For some countries, you would need to apply for the full first year of tuition and then apply. So some more details would be needed on that, please. Future business accounting co-op student, should I pay my first semester tuition or the full year after making? Okay, Adam, I would need to know your country of citizenship for this. Don't put it into the Q&A. Please send me an email and we can work through that together on email, okay? Question, can your partner's visa be applied for at the same time as your study permit? I'm sorry, unfortunately, I can't answer this because it relates to someone other than the study permit applicant. So for this, you would need to talk to an immigration consultant. Or rather, at least I won't be able to assist with that. My email ID is not visible. Sure, yes, of course. I'm so sorry. I kept referring to it. Let me do that now. Let me put that into the chat. All right, so I've put my email into the chat and I hope you can see that. Will the session be emailed because you're having internet issues? I'm sorry, I apologize for that. But unfortunately, no, I'm not going to be sharing this session. All of the information I've shared in the presentation is on the IRCC website, and I have given you detailed links of where to find what. So everything you need, you can find on the internet, okay? And it's on the official government website. Okay, a Sri Lankan living in Singapore. We have just over 10 minutes left. I'm going to try and get through the last few questions quickly. Sri Lankan living in Singapore. It's been almost 4 weeks. You haven't received an update. Who can I contact? Are you asking for an update from Fanshawe College for an application? In which case, Ishara, send me an email and I'll forward it on to our office in Sri Lanka, our office who looks after Sri Lanka, and you can get, and they can assist you with an update. If it's about a study permit, then you need to submit a document onto the IRCC web form. The link for that is in the PDF that I've shared, and they can update you on your study permit application. I joined a little late. Can you put the link of the web page from where I can apply for the study permit? So for the person who asked that question, I'm going to put the PDF into the chat once more, and all of the links are in there, including the link of where to apply for a study permit. Okay, so you should be good. If you apply for a co-op permit, you need a document as evidence of work requirement. Where do you get that? That document is given to you by Fanshawe College. It is included in the pages that are sent to you with your letter of admission. Your letter of admission, the first page should say immediately right at the top that your program includes a work component. And there is a final page at the end of all of those documents. It's got like a very detailed table or a grid, And one of the questions right at the bottom right corner asks if there is a work component. It is pre-filled by Fanshawe, and it says that yes, there is. So that would be the document that you would upload there. Okay, specific question about how long the PGWP. So I have provided a link for that. I apologize, I'm moving quickly, but I'm trying to get through all of your questions. How do you apply from a different visa than my country of citizenship? I'm assuming you mean different country of residence. So perhaps you are a American citizen and Filipino citizen, and you're living in the US. We had that question earlier. So I hope you did see the response to that. When you go onto the IRCC website, those screening questions right at the beginning ask you all of these things. So when it asks you where you are living, you say where you are living. When it asks you citizenship, you share details on that. Okay, everything is online, so you don't need to worry about going in person to any offices in a specific country. For September 23, should you pay first semester tuition fee before you apply, or the reservation fee? So that's the deposit fee you're talking about, the 2,300. This, as I said, depends on country of citizenship. Before applying for your study permit, we strongly recommend that you have paid for the full first semester or the full first year, depending on your country. Okay, please do not apply for your study permit with only your 2,300, because that is only allowed by very few countries. And also, the more money that you show the IRCC that you've paid upfront to the college, the stronger the case is that you have enough financial funds to support your stay in Canada. Question about to apply for the work permit is the letter of admission from Fanshawe. Yes, as I said, it's that first letter and it's that last page with that grid. And there is the question in that bottom right. So the two together is what I would upload. Even if you've uploaded it in a different section, again, upload those 2 pages specifically in the section asking for work, whatever the phrase was, proof of work experience during your program. Okay, applying for a 1-year course, can I pay tuition? Okay, so we're getting this question quite a bit. If you're applying for a 1-year course, can you pay tuition for just the first semester? Does it affect outcome of the visa? So this depends on your country of citizenship as well. If you've paid for the first semester, in most cases, you should be fine to apply for a study permit. Some countries require that you apply for the first year. All right, so country-specific requirement. Letter of financial support, can it be written by 2 people? Your parents? Letter of financial support affidavit? Yes, absolutely. It can be written by 2 people. It can be both of your parents. Include their financial documents. And in that letter, say that they have provided statements of their bank accounts as proof of financial support. Absolutely. Is there a final offer letter after tuition payments? You need a payment certificate and an offer for the application. Okay, there is no final offer letter after tuition payment. The letter of admission that you get at the start is the same document. SDS needs payment certificate, and that is the flywire receipt that you get after you have paid fees. All right, I hope that helps. You're applying for a 1 year. Okay, I've already responded to that. I'm going to move forward. Can you resend the PDF? Yes, I'm not sure if that was asked for before or after. So let me put that into the chat again once more. There you go. Your offer is conditional. One of them is to complete undergrad. Can you apply for study visa before you graduate? Yes, you can. Absolutely. As I said, you can use your conditional letter of admission or your unconditional to apply for your study permit. Obviously, in your case, you're completing your undergraduate studies, and that's perfectly fine. Include all of your transcripts to date to show that you are currently enrolled in an institution. In your study plan, please mention that very clearly, that you are completing your studies. In your study permit PDF, mention that you are a student, mention the institution where you are studying, so that all of the information matches the same answer. Okay. Ninar, Ninar, I'll be sending the PDF as a link to everyone who attended today's session. So not to worry, you don't need to email me. I will send it out to everyone today, okay? All right, we've got 5 minutes left. I apologize if I'm going a little bit quickly. First semester tuition fees means full amount of fees mentioned in the letter or after deduction of the deposit. Good question. It means the amount after the deduction of the deposit. The 2,300 is already counted as part of your prepayment towards the first semester of tuition. So say ballpark figures, first semester of tuition at Fanshawe is around 8,500, say. If you deduct the 2,300 from that, you would need to pay the remainder of that to have paid for the full semester. Okay. Renee, working as a freelancer, projects had no contracts. Should I write down these working experience in the form? Very good question. So if you're working as a freelancer, put that in as a title in the last 10 years. Did you have a business? Were you registered as a business to pay tax as a freelancer? That is something very important that you need to explain. Put it in the PDF if there is space. If not, put it in your letter of explanation. And in that paragraph, mention some of the companies that you did contracts for. If you have a link to an online portfolio, Renee, with some of your work, put that into the letter of explanation. It's just going to help to flesh out your personality and your profile for the visa officer. Okay, excellent. So I have 4 minutes to go. Any other questions that I can help with before we end today's session? You're very, very welcome, Renee. As I mentioned, I will be sending out a link today, an email today with a link to the PDF that I shared in the chat. I know many of you were not able to see it. For those of you where I needed specific personal information, please send me an email. I did put my email address into the chat. I will try to help you as best as possible. And the student who had the question about the passport that expires soon and planning to travel with the new passport. I need to do a little bit of homework on that and then I can get back to you. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up. I hope that today's session was useful. Thank you so much to everyone who joined me. I wish you all the best with your study permit application, and I look forward to meeting you in person when you are at Fanshawe College. Thank you again. Goodbye.